was in billions of dollars. However, the largest impact was to the way we Americans live our lives. From 9/11, we were forced to be vigilant and aware of our surroundings. We no longer felt safe in our country. We had to change. We are changing, and we will continue to change. I'm going to ask Council Member John Collins from Fountain Valley to please lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country.
We've been reciting these words ever since we were in early grammar school. I encourage all of us this evening, think of the words you just heard, and think of the people who gave their lives in defense of this country, and think of what it means to us on a daily basis as we say these 23 words.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Today we have a very special program, and you heard the theme today. In 7 days, it will be 14 years since the attack of 9/11. And the subject today is security, safety. Before we get into the subject, let's invite our regular presenters. We have the report by ACWA by Director Larry McKinney.
Thanks, Jose. So, ACWA report. First, I want to note that ACWA Region 10, Orange and San Diego counties, had a very successful event a couple of weeks ago down in Carlsbad, where we had a series of panels to discuss the tool of desalination as a method of improving water supply, both through seawater desalination, brackish groundwater desalination. We talked about the economic and business decision-making process for that. And it was a well-attended event, and the Region 10 board is now working on developing the concepts that were discussed that day into a program that will be at the fall conference in Indian Wells in the first week of December. I want to remind everybody that the region voting for the region boards, including the Region 10 board, is underway right now. Your agencies that are members all have the ballots. Votes are cast by the agencies subject to their board's approval, so that process is going on and needs to be completed in the next month. I also want to remind people that the committee process for ACWA, the committees where most of the actual work gets done in the organization on developing policies and principles and advocacy and so forth, those committees are all reconstituted every 2 years when the administration, the presidency of the organization changes, and they work up to that. The process right now is people that are interested in serving on committees, including people that are on committees now and want to be reappointed, need to make sure that their sponsoring organizations get their paperwork nominating them into ACWA by September 30th. So that's also happening right now. I want to give one plug to another region's event, our neighboring region, Region 9, which includes the Inland Empire, which is the upper part of the Santa Ana watershed, of course, is having an event on September 18th at the Inland Empire Utilities Agency in the middle of the day, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., focusing on drought response. They're going to have two panel sessions within that period, one on how conservation has been going in the Inland Empire, and then a panel on development during the drought, which should be very interesting. I know we all have this question that we get from our public all the time about, how do you tell them to save because we don't have enough water, but we're growing? And yet, we need to have an economy. So I'm hoping to attend that event, and I look forward to having you all also join us there. And then lastly, I just want to note, in terms of major issues that ACWA is continuing to develop, as you know, ACWA picks up specific important issues along the way, tries to steer discussion, reacts to issues that are all of interest to us. And one of the things that is rising as a topic this year, and I expect we're going to hear more and more about it over the next year, is this idea of some kind of public goods charge or water tax or something like that. We know that the discussion about that is increasing in Sacramento. Aqua is working hard to be a leading advocate on that, and you should watch for more and take this as an opportunity, if that's your issue, to get involved in that policy discussion. Aqua is the best vehicle, I think, to do that on a statewide basis. That's my update. Any questions about Aqua? Yes, one.
Just a quickie. The comments that are made in the paper regularly about the water savings, by target to this, we're saving this or more. Any reaction in your agency or that area?
Well, I don't know if that's an Aqua question, but I think we're all very interested in those numbers. I won't go into my views about that, but I will note that if you go to the Aqua website, Aqua has made an effort to roll up information from all of its members about the responses they've been making to the drought, the need to conserve, and what's working and what's not. So, in addition to it being a good source of information about the water use savings that have been reported, they've also collected information about what seems to be effective in terms of drought response. So I would encourage you to look at that. My overall impression is that everybody seems to be doing a remarkably good job. Statewide, we've achieved goals that I think it's surprising and optimistic how well we've done. So.
Looks like the folks are doing a lot of work.
Yeah, I think so. People have responded well. Okay, Art, real quickly.
Just two quick add-ons. The Aqua State Legislative Committee last week just heard about two new Aqua initiatives. One of them has to do with possibly trying to amend the Constitution to deal with the problems that we're all struggling with relative to rate setting for Proposition 218. The other is more of a procedural question. A policy statement being introduced to the Aqua Board that would deal with what's become kind of a disturbing trend in the legislature to have really important substantive policy issues introduced as budget trailer bills, such that there's very limited opportunity for debate and vetting of those ideas, and it has resulted in some things that are fairly difficult.
Right. So budget trailer bills, budget trailer bills get tacked on at the end of the budget process, and the bills don't go through the normal committee process. That's one of the concerns. So Art is right. That's a very important issue. I didn't include it in my report because the Aqua Board is going to be taking a position on it in September, so they haven't voted on it. But there are some drafts that are being circulated, so talk to your Aqua representatives that you know, learn more about that, let your voice be heard through that mechanism, and then watch for more on that. It's a very important policy discussion. Thanks, Art.
And now the report on the state of the Met by Director Linda Ackerman.
Thank you. Good morning. I don't have a really long report this morning, but long enough. The Water Planning and Stewardship Committee at Metropolitan this last month passed, we had two board actions before us. The first dealt with ownership of acreage that Metropolitan has in the Palo Verde Irrigation District. This land includes land that Met purchased in 2001 from San Diego Gas and Electric, and a recent purchase from a company called Verbena. This land now, I think I just said, totals 22,000 acres. When you own land in PVID, you are entitled to vote in their elections. You get one vote for every acre of land that you own. The vote must be cast in person by a designated representative from the landowner or a person acting as an appointed proxy. In the past, Metropolitan has not exercised their right to vote. They just simply abstained. But because of this larger investment, we want to be sure that we're prepared to safeguard our interests there in Palo Verde. The board voted to delegate this power to the chairman of Metropolitan, who in turn can designate his proxy vote to anyone else on the board or within the agency. If you cannot attend this meeting, you must be there in person. The second board action from this committee was a request to amend an agreement that we already have to store water, intentionally created storage, we call this, surplus water. This amendment includes conditions for the Imperial Irrigation District to store conserved water in Lake Mead and the system, and this will increase their amount of conserved water that they may store for a 3-year term. This agreement will allow them to store up to 75,000 acre-feet of water, and a cumulative total of 200,000 acre-feet. They want to do this to help them prevent inadvertent overruns or conservation shortfalls, so this assures them of a supply should they need it. This agreement would give us access, us Metropolitan, to additional water during the current drought. The terms included define the timing of the return of this water. This is a no-cost agreement to Metropolitan, and it was supported by the board. This is just one of the many ways that we continue to provide you with a reliable source of water. The board also voted on a board action from the Communication and Legislation Committee last month to pass a series of legislative priorities, i.e. policy principles, for staff to follow to help address the current drought bills that are winding their way through the House and the Senate in Washington, D.C. Regarding the Bay Delta, we are once again waiting for another close of comments on yet another EIS on what we now refer to as the Cal Water Fix, previously known as the BDCP, or the Bay Delta Conservation Project. The comment period ends on October 30th, and we hope to have a final solution by the end of the year. The cost allocation discussions are ongoing about who will pay for what regarding the construction of the tunnels. They aren't moving quickly, but they're moving a little more quickly. The good news is that no contractor has yet pulled out of the project. Last but not least, some of you may have had concerns about the toxic spill in Colorado from an abandoned gold mine near Silverton and Durango. The spill was from an old abandoned gold mine, and the EPA, who probably should know better, were working there, and they were working on a pressure that was building up behind an opening in the mine. They punctured a hole bigger, I think, than they thought they were going to puncture, and as you know, the toxic water flowed into the Animas River and then the San Juan River, both of which, of course, flow into the Colorado, and then Lake Powell, and then you know how the rest of the flow goes after that. This spill was 850 miles from Metropolitan's intake at Lake Havasu, and we can assure you that there have been no impacts to our supply. The toxins were already quite diluted by the time the water reached Lake Powell. Though there is a remaining concern that the government is looking at, and that would be toxic metals that may have been settled and left behind in the riverbeds themselves. That would be along those rivers more than when it ever gets further down to us. Now for that little fact about water that you may not know. The first vending machine in history dates back to the 1st century AD. Now you might ask yourself, what does that have to do with water? Well, this vending machine accepted a Roman coin and then dispensed holy water.
Thank you, Linda. We're moving now into the program, the security of water. We have two experts coming to visit us from Los Angeles, and we have a local speaker too. Well, Calif Hubbard has given her time, so we can continue with question and answer after the next speaker. So the next speaker is Michelle Yohannes. She is a cyber intelligence analyst working with the Joint Regional Intelligence Center in Los Angeles, California, where she works to accrue analyze, and provide cyber threat information. In addition, she has experience with IT project management, requirement gathering, website design, content development, user testing, user training, security, and outreach through position with the University of California in Los Angeles, and supporting the Department of Homeland Security. Michelle graduated from the Pennsylvania State University with a master's degree in information science and technology. At Penn State, she research focused on the human aspect of cybersecurity, decision-making, situational awareness, and data fusion. Please help me welcome Michelle Yohannes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I would like to say that first, I am not armed, so if something goes down, get behind Fred.
Use the mic.
It was just way up here, and I'm way down here. So again, my name is Michelle Yohannes, and I am a cyber intelligence analyst with the JRIC. Fred talked a little bit about that. Today I wanted to talk to you, basically break my talk into three pieces. The first is going to talk about sort of traditional cyber threats. The second is some new cyber threats that we've seen kind of developing over the last year. And then the last piece of it, we'll talk a little bit about steps that we can take and resources that are available. So with a brief show of hands, is there anyone that would be surprised to hear that there are state-sponsored hackers trying to get into critical infrastructure networks? Is that a surprise to anyone? No, good. Good! So that's kind of what I think of as the traditional cyber threats that we've heard of for many years. Nation states getting into networks that are basically taking data. They're looking for engineering diagrams, for schematics, anything they can do to get an idea of what a critical infrastructure network looks like, what devices are out there, and what opportunities they will have to exploit those devices. The other thing they do while they're in there is get usernames and passwords, so anything they didn't pick up the first time, they can come back in and get later. The idea behind this is basically reconnaissance. They're trying to get an understanding of what is available in this landscape. And from a military perspective, we call that preparation of the battle space. Trying to get an idea of what, if this is sending their scout over the hill to see what happens in the case of an actual war, basically. They want to know what opportunities they have to attack. There have been instances of physical damage being done to plants using the SCADA devices, the supervisory control and data acquisition devices, turning pumps on and off, on and off, on and off, and getting them to fail. But that's not been the major. It happens, but that's not the major. The major point of most of these attacks are just gathering information. What's interesting in some of the attacks that we've seen, especially the ones that actually result in physical damage, is that a lot of times operators have seen weird stuff happening on the network, and they just kind of attribute it to a computer glitch. Kind of, as Fred was talking about, see something, say something. What looks like weird stuff is oftentimes people meddling in your network. And so anytime you see something weird, I would not attribute it to a glitch. I would say, hey, let's get in there and look at this a little bit closer. The interesting thing when we talk about the attack vectors, the way that intrusions are coming into our networks, 71% of them, these figures come from a survey done by two security leaders of both the Americas, North and South America. There was a sample size of 575 security professionals, and 71% of them said that their networks were accessed through phishing attacks. We know what a phishing attack is? Anyone? Okay, so a phishing attack is when a person tries to get your information through usually an email. So you get an email that says, your account may be compromised. Please enter your username and password here so we can verify who you are. Very, very bad. Your IT department will never ask you to put in your username and password. If you do that, you've given hackers your access, and they have access to everything that you do when you get into your own computer network, be it at work, be it at your home, wherever. So it's incredibly effective. It's really easy to get into a network when you have valid login credentials. So 71% of the hacks are coming in that way. 50% are coming in through these unpatched vulnerabilities. Again, this is what we've heard of a lot in the past several years, of devices that are running with admin or the manufacturer passwords and that sort of thing. So being hacked into that way and getting into the network through those unpatched vulnerabilities. There's also some website SQL injections and cross-site scripting. These are basically pieces of malware that can come in through a website through their data entry piece. If you have a website that says sign in here, that is, a person is putting in information which goes into the network, into the system. So you can actually inject malware into those and pull it into the database and get information into your network through there. But again, I want to stress that the big 71% is from a phishing attack, and that's basically you giving your information away. So if you take nothing away from my talk, take away, don't give out your username and password. I'll move on again to the motivation that we've seen. Again, this is data that's come in over the past year from security professionals that are securing critical infrastructure networks. 60% of the attempts are stolen information. Again, that's that reconnaissance, people coming in to try to get information about what kind of devices and information is in the system, in the critical infrastructure network. 54% of it is a attempt to manipulate the organization's equipment. Like I said, they do have some attacks that are trying to manipulate pumps and cause physical damage. Of course, everyone's heard of Stuxnet, so we know that we can use computer viruses to inflict physical damage in the real world. That's just kind of some real world look at what things are kind of going on based on that traditional cyber threat. I wanted to put this up. This is the frequency of incidents. This information came from the Industrial Control Systems Cyber Security Information Response, or Cyber Emergency Response Team, ICS CERT, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. This is information from the first half of fiscal year 2015, October 2014 to April 2015. They responded to 108 critical infrastructure cyber incidents. And of those 108 critical infrastructure incidents, 20 of them were affecting the water sector. See that little green piece of pie up in the top, kind of left-hand side. What's interesting about that is that 2014, fiscal year 2014, was thought of as the energy target. A lot of the attacks that ICS CERT was responding to were at the energy level. Energy is a little bit down, and now it looks like they've moved on to water and critical manufacturing. So apparently they got everything they need to know about energy, and now moving on to water. So your concern here is valid, and it looks like there are more and more. And this is just the first half of the year, so we do expect that to continue through the second half of the year. Yes, sir?
Could you describe an example of something like that that might say the water?
Really, a lot of times you won't know. So again, I was saying that sometimes people look at some things and they say, oh, there's some funny stuff, the network is looking funny. And they've had these critical infrastructure response team come in and look and find out that there is mountains of data, files. Again, engineering diagrams and schematics are all just being sent right out of a back door within the network and off to some server in China or Russia or somewhere. So again, a lot of times it's not something that you know is happening, but it is happening. And where the problem is going to be, obviously, is when that information is used to put attacks and bring down, various pieces of the infrastructure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, when you read about the federal government having incidents, do they try to hide the fact that it was a cyber attack? Example, 3 weeks ago, Dallas Airport was shut down for 6 hours by the air controllers because of malfunction in their controllers. Would that have been an attack, or they just never gave a reason?
It doesn't necessarily, I don't know that particular incident, so I certainly can't speak to that one. We definitely are working at transparency and information sharing. Among the Industrial Control Systems group, for example, they put out a newsletter and they talk about different, they usually have a case study in it, and anyone can subscribe to the newsletter and get it. But they definitely are working at trying to understand what attack vectors, what threat actors are out, and what their MO is, so that we can share that information across the sector. It's definitely something. Now, would they release it on the 6 o'clock news? Maybe not. But definitely within the security sector, there's a huge push for information sharing. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Have you people been aware of, there are many agencies that have been digitizing or have maps of our facilities digitized, and in some cases that digitizing has been like with a local company that sent that data or those maps to another country such as India and have those maps digitized. My concern, of course, is that those maps show our facilities, underground piping, and so forth. Are your people concerned with that specific incident? Because it is happening.
Yeah, I don't doubt that that's happening, and that's kind of one of those cases where that company clearly is not doing so for nefarious purposes, but it's kind of an accidental leak. But those are exactly the kinds of things that the nation-sponsored hackers are downloading from our own networks as well. So, yeah, I'm aware that that's happening, but again, that's kind of an accidental leak, and that's probably something that needs to be addressed in policies and contracts versus a technical solution.
So you had no knowledge of your people actually investigating?
No. Yeah.
Just to interject really quickly, at the end of Michelle's presentation, Kelly is going to give a brief update, and she will speak on that as well, so she can provide some additional information.
There you go. Yes, sir.
What's your view on two-factor identification, where NASA, for example, to get access to our facilities, now we have a token?
Mm-hmm. Something you know and something you have. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It seems like an additional layer that really should help.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely anything that you can add to the authentication process. That, you know, that's a two-factor authentication. For those of you who know or don't know, is when you have something that you know, for example, a PIN number or a password, but you also have to have something physical, something you have. So this gentleman was talking about a token that has numbers that change, and you have to put in both of those pieces of information as well as your username to get access to the system. It's definitely a great idea, something more that you can have. Somebody was asking me about biometrics the other day, so that's an even stronger level of security. I don't know how practical that could be for everyone, but yeah, two-factor authentication is definitely a stronger authentication protocol than just a password. Okay.
And to address this question, there are ITAR regulations, you know, for export,
yep. Mm-hmm.
and so forth, that can really help cut down on this exporting.
10 minutes? 9, okay. All right. Let me just move forward. I wanted to talk about, so we talked about kind of the traditional things that we've seen in terms of attacks on critical infrastructure, and again, primarily used for reconnaissance and to cause physical harm as opposed to financial gain. And so that's where I'm moving into my next thing. Has anyone heard of ransomware? People heard? Yep. So one of the things, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center received 992 complaints between April of 2014 and June of 2015 about ransomware. Basically what this is you download, you click on a link either on a website or through an email. It downloads some malware which goes through and encrypts your entire computer and basically holds it for ransom. You can't get any of your information or data until you pay. Most of the ransoms from an individual are 1 to 2 bitcoins. A bitcoin is about $227 US, so for a couple $100 on your personal machine, you can get your data back. But what we're also starting to see is that small, medium-sized businesses are being targeted. And so this ransomware is being downloaded. Again, you're clicking on an advertisement, for example, and this advertisement could be on a reputable site. I don't want to call out anybody in particular, but a lot of the sites that have advertisements on them, Facebook, for example, Facebook doesn't create the ads themselves. They have a third-party vendor that creates the ads. Those third-party vendors try to do a very good job of screening the ads that are put out, but they don't screen them all, and some of them have malware attached to them. So you could be going to a reputable site, not crazypartytimes.com, but a news site or a Facebook site, and it's possible that the ads that are on there could have malware associated with them, and you could get this ransomware. It's important to think of, obviously, for personal reasons, but again, we're seeing a lot more small and medium-sized businesses. So this isn't specifically targeted at the water system or critical infrastructure, but it's definitely targeted at business, so it's something that folks need to be aware of. Two other things I wanted to talk to you about were targets of opportunity. You can see this website. This appeared on the homepage of a public water utility on July 7th. Now that I think about it, I think that's a typo. I think it was June 7th. Anyway, this is clearly a message from a hacker, a pro-Palestinian hacker. His message says something along the lines of, "Tell your government to know about Palestine. We will continue to hack your websites until they listen to us," or something like that. So this was up on the water utilities public-facing website. Of course, the public could not get to any of the services for the water company's website. It was up for about 45 minutes before they figured it out and got it pulled down. So again, I say this wasn't necessarily targeted at the water company in particular, but they're looking for sites that can easily be compromised, and they'll look at any of them. So that's what we call a target of opportunity. They had an opportunity and they took it to put out their message. So again, something that needs to be considered as you're looking at your security profile. The final thing is data leaks. I'm sure that folks have heard about Ashley Madison on the news, and everybody's saying, you're all sitting here going, I'm not cheating on my spouse, why are you talking to me about this? But it turns out that there was some analysis done on the email addresses that were leaked, and there were 46,000 email addresses that are associated with state, local, tribal, territorial government addresses. What this tells us is that folks are using their email addresses from work to sign up for things, because your significant other might have access to your personal account, but he or she probably doesn't have access to your work account, so you use your work account and then you won't get caught, unless the site gets hacked. So this poses a problem for two reasons. One, you have an email address right out there in plain sight, so that makes you a pretty easy target for blackmail. You get an email that says, "Hey, pay me or I'm going to call your husband or your wife." It also gives you a great big list of emails to use for phishing attacks. We already know they're good email addresses. So you get an email that says, "Oh, you may have been exposed in this Ashley Madison. Click here and log in to, secure your account," or something. Click in, and again, you're divulging your username and your password. So when you see some things like this, you probably think, "Oh, I'm happily married, this isn't going to be a problem," but when we look back at our organizations, it does provide some risk, so I wanted to bring that up as something to be aware of. I brought this diagram from Shiner Engineering, which is 7 steps to cybersecurity for control systems. I know it's pretty small and hard to read, but basically the first step is to take and do an assessment, look at your network, see what's there, make sure you know exactly what is on your network. Then you're going to work on documentation of policies and procedures. It's definitely very important. If you're going to make two-factor authentication something that's, you need to make that written in document and move forward. This is even small for me to read. Boy, that is tiny. I'm sorry. Train personnel and contractors. Of course, one of the best things that we can do is train our users. Train them about what a phishing email is and make sure that they know that they're not going to click it. Make sure you train users to upgrade their systems and keep their information secure. Segment the control system network. This is something that is, in my opinion, a pretty no-brainer. If your control systems aren't on the internet, then perhaps people won't be able to get to them. There are some methods that you can use to kind of segment the network. You want to keep your business network separate from the actual devices that are controlling your water pipes. That's a big step. It's called putting an air gap between them. Control access to the system. This is actually an interesting thing. You want to make sure that you give people the least amount of access that they possibly need to do their job. Just because you are an important person doesn't mean that you need to be able to turn pipe A on and off at a moment's notice. So definitely want to limit who has access to your systems. That just makes it so that if you do unfortunately fall victim of a phishing attack, your privileges will not be used to escalate a further attack. Harden the components of the system. That's basically, making sure to apply patches and good security around the individual devices on the system. And then monitor and maintenance. The biggest thing I can tell you when it comes to cybersecurity is that it's not a set it and forget it. You don't set something up and say, okay, I secured it, it's good, we're done. It's a continuous process. You always want to be monitoring the threats and looking at what is out there, looking at what's going on in your network, and constantly checking in each time to make sure that your secure position is still in place. The last thing I wanted to leave you with are some resources. We obviously just heard from Fred. There's obviously a lot of information that InfraGard can offer for people to understand in several cybersecurity classes that he offers. There's also a lot of documentation coming out of the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, that gives very specific guide to the industrial control system sectors specifically, and then there's some more general information on security controls. There's also the North American Electric Reliability Corporation that has some standards that need to be implemented. The other thing that I wanted to let you know specifically is that ICS CERT, the Infrastructure Control Group, offers self-assessment and facilitated on-site assessments. So you can ask them to come to your organization and they will do, this is strictly for cybersecurity, they will look at your network and help you to secure your network. And it's free. All about free. So you get a bunch of guys, they'll come from the DC area and they can walk through your network specifically and help you to secure it. Also, I wanted to bring up US CERT and the MSISAC. These two organizations are basically analysis centers that gather information and then disseminate them out. You can apply to get their newsletters and that sort of thing and get up-to-date information, and of course your local fusion centers, of which I am a part. If you have any kind of incident, we would love it if you would give us a call and let us know or send us an email. I put up two here. I'm from the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, the JRIC up in Norwalk. You also have within Orange County an Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, they call that the OCIAC. So either one would be appropriate for you to contact if God forbid something happens and you have a computer network hack attack. Get in contact with us and we can help you get started.
you, Michelle, and thank you, Fred. We're going to have an update from Kelly. Please.
All right. I know you guys are done here. I just want to give you a really quick couple pieces of information that are local to Orange County before I let you guys go. So it got mentioned, we have the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center here in Orange County. I work with the OCIAC on a regular basis. We have monthly critical infrastructure protection meetings. We talk about security, cybersecurity, infrastructure security. We have a water security assessment, water sector security report. That is a vulnerability assessment report of the water sector in Orange County. It is not a public document. You do not have a right to look at it. I apologize. But your management does. Your operations staff do. It's anyone who has a right to or has a direct need to have that information related to their job duties. So we have a water sector security assessment here in Orange County that's been shared with some of the management. It's been shared with some of the agencies. It is not a public document, and so if you are an elected official or you are here representing your agency, I apologize. It is not necessarily a document for you. However, the OCIAC here in Orange County has offered that they will do a closed session with your elected board if you are interested in having a closed session on cyber or infrastructure security. That's something I can help facilitate for you if you'd like assistance with that. But there is a general email up there. We have the OCIAC Cyber. OCIAC's general email is OCIAC@OCIAC.org, and so it's just like that one, only without the cyber. So then you get the whole entire OCIAC group instead of just the cyber team. You can also contact me. Most of you know me, Kelly Hubbard. I have my card over there on the side if you'd like it. I also brought a one-pager about Orange County and the OCIAC that I printed out and I put over on the side for you. I do want to note that we have had some security incidents locally in Orange County, and so it's, I'm not going to say that Al-Qaeda is not going to come to Orange County and come after your water system, but I know a lot of people struggle with that concept. I will say you will always have the nut job next door who doesn't like government or doesn't like the way their neighbor treated them, or you always have that person who's that potential. And there has been some incidents locally. We're working with East Orange County Water District right now on some security incidents that's dealing with their own sublease contractors, but it's leaving their infrastructure exposed. And so we're working with the local law enforcement on how do we better secure our infrastructure and work with those subcontractors to create more security for our facilities. So we've had some incidents locally. We've had some cyber incidents in Orange County that have involved government agencies, including law enforcement agencies. And so I highly recommend that you work on your cyber security for your agency. And again, there's the FBI cyber assessment, but Orange County OCIAC has been doing cyber assessments as well as vulnerability assessments of your infrastructure. So again, it's a group that can come in and help you. Happy to talk to anyone about it if you would like some more information about the local group. Or just, I will always give this plug, it's National Preparedness Month. If you want some more information about general emergency preparedness, let me know. I also brought some handouts about emergency preparedness. So thank you. I'll be here if you have any questions.
Well, this concludes the meeting. You're welcome to go home. Thank you to all of you.